You've been doing everything right, you've been patient, you've been kind, you've been showing up, and they keep pulling away. Every single time you feel like things are getting good, they disappear, they go cold, they say they need space, and you're sitting there wondering, did I do something wrong? Is this even real? Does this person actually feel anything for me at all? Here's what nobody tells you. The person running away from you might be the one who's falling the hardest. I know that sounds completely backwards. I know it sounds like I'm just trying to make you feel better, but stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you see this relationship and the way you see yourself inside of it. If you've ever loved someone who pulls away, who goes quiet, who seems terrified of getting close, this is for you. Drop the word avoidant in the comments right now if this is your situation. And make sure you're subscribed, because this channel is where we talk about love in a way that actually makes sense of the chaos. Now, let's get into it. Sign number 1, they keep coming back. Let's start with the most obvious one that most people completely misread. If an avoidant truly didn't care about you, they would disappear permanently. Full stop, gone, no contact, no text at 2 in the morning. No randomly liking your photo from 3 weeks ago. No, hey, how have you been? After 2 weeks of silence, avoidants are not careless people. They are actually deeply, deeply careful. They are careful about who they let in. They are careful about how much they reveal. They are careful about where they spend their emotional energy. So when they keep coming back to you, when they keep returning to the orbit of your life even after they've pushed you away, that is not random. That is not casual. That is them being pulled towards you in a way they cannot fully control, and it is terrifying them. Here's the thing you need to understand about avoidant attachment. It wasn't born in a vacuum. It was built through years, sometimes decades of learning that closeness leads to pain, that needing someone leads to disappointment, that being vulnerable leads to rejection or shame or abandonment. And so the brain learned to protect itself. The brain built walls, high, thick, beautiful walls. And behind those walls, the person learned to function. They got good at being alone. They told themselves they preferred it. And then you showed up and something cracked, and they don't know what to do with that crack. Because every instinct they have is telling them to seal it back up, to go back to the safety of distance, to retreat to the version of themselves that doesn't need anyone. But they can't quite do it, not completely, because you're in their head. You're in their chest. And they keep finding their way back to you even when their feet are pointed in the other direction. That push and pull that you're living through right now, that cycle of closeness and distance, that is not them playing games. That is them at war with themselves. And the fact that they keep choosing to come back even when every survival instinct is telling them not to, that is love, messy, unprocessed, terrified love. But love, the danger is that most people at this stage either chase too hard, which pushes the avoidant further into their shell, or they give up entirely, which the avoidant reads as confirmation that love always ends in abandonment, and so the cycle gets reinforced. What you need to do is understand what's actually happening beneath the surface, not react to the behavior, respond to the person underneath it. Sign number 2, they let you see something real. Avoidants are masters of surface. They are genuinely impressive in social situations. They know how to be warm, funny, engaging, interesting. They can make you feel like you're the only person in the room. They can talk for hours about ideas, about the world, about movies, about philosophy, about work. They can seem incredibly open, but here's the distinction. There is a difference between being socially fluent and being emotionally vulnerable. And avoidants almost never let their guard down enough to show you the second one, almost never. So when they do, you need to pay attention, because if they've shown you something real, something raw, something that they don't typically show the world, that is not an accident. That is not them just having a moment. That is trust. That is an enormous thing for someone who has spent their whole life guarding themselves. Maybe they told you about something painful from their past. Maybe they admitted they were scared of something. Maybe they cried in front of you, or almost cried. Maybe they told you they don't usually open up like this. Maybe they said something like, I don't know why I'm telling you this, and then laughed it off nervously. Maybe they showed you the part of their life they keep hidden from everyone else. Their childhood home, their family dynamic, their deepest insecurity. When an avoidant shows you something real, they immediately feel exposed, and the next thing they do is usually pull back, because vulnerability for them feels like danger. It triggers the old wiring, the old messaging that says, if you let someone see the real you, you'll get hurt. So they share something deep and then they go cold. And you sit there confused, wondering what happened, replaying the conversation, trying to figure out where it went wrong, but it didn't go wrong, it went right. They just got scared of how right it went. This is one of the most important patterns to recognize. Because if you can learn to sit with the silence after an avoidant opens up without panicking, without chasing, without demanding more, you become the safest person they've ever let in. And safety is exactly what they've been starving for their whole lives. They don't need someone who pushes them to open up more. They need someone who doesn't punish them for the opening they already gave. They need someone who receives what they share and doesn't weaponize it, who doesn't use it to create pressure or expectation, who just holds it quietly, steadily, like it's precious, because to them it is. That little piece of real they showed you cost them something. Respect it. Sign number 3, they are watching you all the time. This one flies completely under the radar, and it is one of the most telling signs that an avoidant has genuine feelings for you. They watch you constantly, carefully, almost obsessively. They know your patterns. They notice when something is off with you before you've said a word. They remember the small things you mentioned once in passing. The name of your dog, the thing you said about your dad, the movie you told them you cried at, the coffee order you mentioned once. They file these things away with incredible precision, and here's why. Because people invest attention in the things that matter to them. An avoidant who doesn't care doesn't notice. They're not paying attention. They're not tracking your moods. They're not storing your details. They don't have the emotional bandwidth for that with someone who doesn't mean anything to them. But with you, they do. You might catch them staring at you and then immediately looking away. You might notice that they remember something you said weeks ago. You might find that they know things about you that you don't remember telling them. That's because they're absorbing you. They're studying you. They're trying to understand you in a way that feels safe because observation feels safer to them than participation. Asking questions feels too close. Making requests feels too revealing. Actually saying, I want to know more about you, feels like it opens a door they're not ready to open. So instead they watch. They collect information silently. They build a picture of you in their mind that is far more detailed and loving than anything they would ever say out loud. If you've ever felt like an avoidant knows you in a way that doesn't match how little they've actually asked about you, this is why. They've been paying attention in every way except the one that would require them to show their hand. That quiet attentiveness is intimacy for them. That's how they love. Not through words necessarily, not through declarations, but through the kind of paying attention that says, you matter to me more than I'll ever tell you directly. Sign number 4, they get irrationally upset when they feel you pulling away. This is the one that catches people completely off guard because they're the one who's been distant, they're the one who's been creating the space, they're the one who went cold, and then the moment you start to protect yourself, the moment you start to pull back a little, the moment you stop being as available, something shifts. Suddenly they're texting more, suddenly they want to see you, suddenly there's this energy of urgency that wasn't there before, and people usually interpret this as them being manipulative, as them playing games, as them only wanting you when they can't have you. But that's not the full picture. What's actually happening is called the avoidant activation system, and it's not a strategy, it's not conscious, it's biological. When the threat of losing someone they're attached to becomes real, the avoidant brain finally overrides the protective shutdown. The fear of loss becomes bigger than the fear of closeness, and suddenly they feel everything they've been suppressing. They feel the attachment. They feel the care. They feel how much they don't want to lose you, and it crashes over them like a wave, and they don't know how to handle except to reach for you. Now, here's where it gets really important, because this is the moment most people get confused. Either you've been pulling away as a tactic, which is exhausting and unsustainable, and built on a foundation of game playing, or you've been pulling away because you're genuinely protecting yourself, because the distance was too much and you needed to breathe. If it's the second one, good. That's healthy. That's you having a self. That's you not disappearing into someone else's emotional weather. But here's what matters now. If they come towards you in this moment, don't make them pay for it. Don't suddenly flip into the role of the punisher because now you have the power. Don't get cold when they get warm. That just reinforces every story they've ever told themselves about love being a trap. What you do instead is stay steady. Stay warm but boundaried. Let them come towards you without making it a test and without abandoning your own needs to accommodate them. Because the goal isn't to win the push and pull. The goal is to break the cycle entirely. And the only way you break it is by being someone who doesn't play the game at all. Someone who is consistently themselves regardless of where the avoidant is standing. That consistency, that genuine emotional steadiness is the most magnetic thing you can offer someone with avoidant attachment because they have never had it. Not really. And a part of them has been looking for it their entire lives. Sign number 5, they show up in action even when they disappear in words. Avoidants are terrible with words, not because they're unintelligent, often the opposite, but because words are declarations. Words are permanent. Words can be quoted back at you. Words are proof of something. And an avoidant who is deeply afraid of commitment doesn't want to create proof because proof can be used against them. So they go quiet, they pull back on the verbal affection. They don't say, I miss you even when they do. They don't say, I love you even when they feel it. They don't make grand romantic speeches. They don't send long, heartfelt texts. And this can make you feel invisible, like none of what you're sharing is being received. But watch what they do. They show up when you need them, even when it's inconvenient. They fix the thing you mentioned was broken. They remember to ask how the important meeting went. They're there at 2. 0 in the morning when something falls apart, even if they pretend it's no big deal. They make room for you in their life, even as they pretend they're not. They rearrange their schedule without announcing it. They do the thing you needed without making it a performance. Actions are safe for avoidance in a way that words aren't. Actions can be framed as just helping, as just being a good person, as just doing what anyone would do. They don't require admitting to feelings. They don't create vulnerability in the same explicit way. But make no mistake, when an avoidant goes out of their way for you consistently, when they show up in their behavior, even when they're running in their words, that is love. That is love doing the only thing it knows how to do safely right now. Your job is not to demand the words while ignoring the actions. And your job is also not to accept actions as a permanent substitute for the words you deserve. The goal is to create an environment over time where both become possible, where they feel safe enough to let the words catch up to what the actions have already been saying. Now, here's what nobody talks about. And this is the part I really want you to sit with. Loving and avoiding is not just about understanding them. It's about understanding yourself. Because here's a question that matters. Why are you so drawn to someone who keeps pulling away? Why does this particular dynamic feel so magnetic to you? Why do you stay up at night trying to decode them instead of being with someone who is simply straightforwardly, openly there? For some people, the answer is simple. They fell in love with a person who happens to have avoidant patterns, and they're trying to navigate it with wisdom. That's real. That happens, and everything I've said today applies to you. But for other people, the pull toward an avoidant is itself a pattern. The uncertainty keeps them engaged in a way that certainty doesn't. The chase feels more like love than the arrival. The anxiety of not knowing feels more alive than the peace of being sure. And if that's you, this isn't a judgment. This is an invitation to look at your own attachment patterns with the same curiosity and compassion you've been offering this person, because you can't build a lasting relationship on a foundation of decoding someone. You can't spend your whole life translating silence into love and hoping eventually the translation won't be necessary. You deserve someone who moves towards you consistently, imperfectly maybe, messily certainly, but towards you. The question isn't just, can an avoidant love you? The question is, what kind of love do you want? What kind of life do you want? What do you deserve? And the answer to that question, whatever it is, needs to come from a place of real self-respect, not from fear of being alone, not from the hope that if you just figure out the right combination of patience and distance and warmth, they'll finally stop running. Not from the belief that love is supposed to be this hard. Sometimes love is hard because something real is being built through genuine difficulty. And sometimes love is hard because the foundation was never quite right. Only you can know which one this is. And you can only know it if you're honest with yourself in a way that requires real courage. Here's what I want you to take from everything we've talked about today. Avoidants are not broken. They are not lost causes. They are not incapable of love. They are people who learn to protect themselves in a world that has at some point made vulnerability feel dangerous. And some of them, when they meet the right person, and when the circumstances are right, and when they're willing to do the work on themselves, can and do open up, can and do commit, can and do build something real and lasting, but it takes two things working together. It takes your understanding and patience and steadiness, and it takes their willingness to actually engage with their own patterns rather than just letting you manage around them forever. You can be the safest person in the world and still not be enough to override someone's refusal to grow. And that's not your failure. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's just the reality of how healing works. It has to be chosen by the person who needs it. So keep your eyes open, not just for the 5 signs we talked about today, not just for evidence of their feelings, but for evidence of their growth, for signs that they're actually engaging with the work of becoming more available, more present, more able to meet you. Because someone who is falling in love with you but running away is still someone who is running. And at some point, you have to decide if you're going to keep standing still, waiting for them to turn around, or if you're going to start walking in the direction of the life you actually want. That doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean leaving. It means holding yourself to a standard. It means knowing what you need and being willing to name it. It means loving them genuinely and fully while also loving yourself enough to have a line. The people who successfully navigate relationships with avoidance are not the ones who figured out all the tricks. They're not the ones who mastered the push and pull. They're the ones who became so grounded in themselves, so clear on their own worth, so genuinely secure in who they are that they stop needing the avoidant to change in order to feel okay. And ironically, that groundedness, that self-assurance, that quiet refusal to fall apart over someone else's distance is exactly what creates the space for an avoidant to finally step forward, not because you played it right, because you became someone who didn't need to play it at all. And there is one more thing that rarely gets discussed when we talk about avoidance and love. We spend so much time asking whether they love us that we forget to ask whether the relationship itself is becoming healthier over time, because love and relationship success are not the same thing. Someone can genuinely love you and still not know how to be in a healthy relationship. Someone can miss you, think about you constantly, feel deeply connected to you, and still struggle to provide the consistency, emotional availability, and security that a lasting partnership requires. This is where so many people get stuck. They see proof of love and assume that proof of love guarantees a future. It doesn't. Love is important, love is necessary, but love by itself is not enough. A healthy relationship also needs communication. It needs accountability. It needs emotional courage. It needs two people who are willing to face uncomfortable truths instead of running from them. And that's why I want you to pay attention not only to how they feel about you, but to what they do with those feelings. Are they making an effort to communicate better than they did 6 months ago? Are they becoming more aware of their own reactions? Are they taking responsibility when they withdraw instead of pretending nothing happened? Are they learning how to stay present when empathy starts to feel uncomfortable? Growth is often slow. Healing is rarely linear. But growth leaves evidence. Someone who is working on themselves may still stumble. They may still have moments where fear wins. They may still pull back occasionally, but over time there should be movement. The distance should become shorter. The conversation should become deeper. The walls should become lower. The trust should become stronger. If year after year nothing changes, if you're carrying the entire emotional weight of the relationship by yourself, then what you're experiencing isn't growth, it's maintenance. You're simply learning how to survive a situation that never evolves. And that's an important distinction, because your life is happening right now. Your happiness is happening right now. Your future is being built right now. You don't get those years back. That's why secure love is not about waiting forever. Secure love is about giving people room to grow while also respecting your own timeline, your own needs, and your own emotional well-being. A secure person doesn't force growth. They don't issue ultimatums every week. They don't try to control another person's healing journey, but they also don't abandon themselves in the process. They don't shrink their needs to make someone else's fears more comfortable. They don't convince themselves that breadcrumbs are a feast. They don't spend years accepting less than they truly need while calling it patience. And that balance is one of the hardest lessons anyone can learn, because real love requires compassion, but self-respect requires boundaries. And mature relationships need both. The truth is that many avoidants are carrying wounds they never asked for. Experiences that taught them closeness was risky. Lessons that convinced them that depending on people would eventually lead to disappointment, rejection, or pain. Those wounds deserve compassion, but compassion doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Compassion doesn't mean accepting permanent emotional unavailability. Compassion doesn't mean turning your entire life into a rescue mission. You can understand someone's pain without making that pain your responsibility to fix. You can love someone deeply without making them the center of your emotional universe. You can hope for their growth while recognizing that the decision to grow belongs to them, and perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. Your role is not to save them. Your role is not to heal them. Your role is not to carry them across a bridge they refuse to walk. Your role is simply to show up as the healthiest version of yourself and allow them the opportunity to do the same. If they meet you there, something beautiful can happen. If they don't, that tells you something important too. Not about your value, not about your lovability, not about whether you were enough, but about whether the relationship is capable of becoming what you need it to become. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept that answer. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself too. That kind of self-respect changes everything. It changes how you interpret mixed signals. It changes how long you tolerate uncertainty. It changes what you accept and what you no longer accept. And most importantly, it changes the kind of relationships you create in the future. Because once you truly know your worth, you stop chasing people who are endlessly running. You stop trying to earn love that should be freely given. You stop believing that suffering is proof of devotion. And you begin choosing connections where affection, effort, respect, and commitment can exist together. That's the destination. Not getting an avoidant to stop avoiding, not winning some emotional game, not finally hearing the words you've waited to hear. The destination is creating a relationship where both people can show up fully, honestly, and consistently. That's where the real relationship begins. Not in the decoding, not in the waiting, not in the perfect text, or the perfect response, or the perfect amount of distance. In you, fully, completely, beautifully you. If you know someone who is in exactly the situation right now, share this with them, not to give them false hope, but to give them real understanding. Because real understanding is the beginning of every real decision. And if this hit home for you today, drop the word avoidant in the comments and tell me which of these 5 signs you recognize in your own situation. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next one.